Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook. Let's see if we can draw something just kind of fun. Hopefully not a very long time doing this. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I have a pen. I'm going to dip it in my inkwell. And yeah, so let's see. We'll try zooming in on this. Let's go to here. All right. Well, what I had floating around in my head as I was walking towards my desk here was kind of a face, and maybe it's like from my own childhood. I mean, it's got to be from my own childhood. It's like a kindly face. It's strange to do this kind of stuff where you kind of have a vision of something, but it's a reminder of somebody without actually being somebody. Maybe it's a character that I would have seen with something. That's possible. But just to remind me of somebody. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things would be to visit my grandparents. And my grandmother spent a lot of time just sort of looking after people. Now, she'd have a kettle on. She would always make sure that there was like food about. And in those days, just for the busying's sake, she rarely would sit down with us if she had prepared a meal. It's interesting. And mind you, she did some snacking as she would, you know, be working on things too. But it's interesting though. She was amongst my favorite people of all time. Now, it's possible that, well, I was a teenager when she had passed, uh, that somebody has some of those recipes that I really enjoyed. So she made rhubarb jam and fresh cookies and biscuits. That was some of my favorite things. Rhubarb jam, to me, if you do it right, it has sort of like it's tart and sweet, of course. Kind of like the way, maybe it's like similar to the way that people like sour candy. I'm not really sure how I could describe that, but I haven't really had it that much where I enjoyed it other than the way that my grandmother would make it. Now, I know some of the secrets, of course, of what made it good. Obviously, sugar, but strawberries, of course, that made a big difference. Something I don't always think about, though, is that my grandmother was a young woman at one time, and before that, she was a kid. We don't really think of, well, I should say I don't really think of that kind of stuff too often. But she had 11 kids, which is kind of remarkable. And my mother was the second eldest of them. Of course, I've talked about this before, how by the time my own mother uh, moved out and you know started working on a career of some sort, my grandmother was and grandfather, I guess you'd say. Well, anyway, between the two of them, they were just finishing up having kids of their own. So I have uncles and aunts that are not that far off from me in age. They had lost their last one, which her name would have been Cynthia. So she passed when she was a baby, so it's one that I didn't get to meet. It's not supposed to look exactly like my grandmother. I'm just trying to picture a face. So yeah. So today should be an interesting day. It'll be kind of a rainy week. I think tomorrow there might be a break in the rain. And every so often you hear people talking about, we need the rain. Of course we need the rain. If you spend any time outside, well, you don't really like the rain as much. So it depends, I suppose, on what to expect from the rain. I wonder about the things that we would get from our grandparents. Now, again, this is something else that I would have, rambled on about how sometimes uh, the people that you kind of admire differently than your own parents, because they're often very different than your own parents or your grandparents, because it might be very similar to you. It's kind of funny. Again, I'm not really going to ramble on about that. This is just a doodle. Let me know if you are in a household where you bake, or if all your cookies are store bought. occasion, very rare occasion, uh, I might kind of do some baking, but not really. I once made a pound cake, which is pretty easy to do. Now I very rarely turn on the oven, so it's all about the air fryer. You ever hear people talking about, having a love language? I think for some people, looking after others is their love language. And if you can provide a meal for somebody, you're taking care of like that person and what is essential to their life. It's a great way of showing that you care. Depending on how you do certain things, at the end of your life, there might be I don't know what you'd want to call it, a contingency. There might be a group of people who, if you go to a church, for example, they might be in some ways responsible for getting you uh, like little sandwiches. For if there's a wake or there's a visitation or the funeral itself. I don't know why. Some would say, I suppose, that it's about free time. You don't really get to see too many young people doing that. Could be about free time. I'm not sure. We're almost done here, I think, just for the doodle that's inside my head. So let's just say, maybe, just maybe, I need to involve myself in something like that. I don't know if I could say that I have lots and lots of free time. I mean, I sit down to draw a picture. It's not the most complicated thing. In my head, I was thinking more about molasses cookies than I was chocolate chip, but maybe these need to be chocolate chip cookies. That's easy enough to do. We just add chocolate chips. often. They weren't really my favorite. That's not something you'd ever complain about because they were still delicious. I'm not sure if I told this story, but one time, when visiting my grandfather, my siblings and we were treated to his version of making us a delicious breakfast. And so that would include uh, making us sandwiches. So, of course, you'd have toast, but he decided that we needed some other version of this. And it was going to be cheese slices and mayonnaise and bacon bits, I believe were, whatever he was thinking that this was going to be great. And I remember biting into one of those sandwiches. He didn't even like, you know, make them like grilled cheese. Anyway, he forgot to take the plastic off the cheese slices. Oh, the chewing. So I think this is kind of it for what I'm up to. Just a kind of a memory thing. And again, I don't, this isn't going to look exactly like her. That's not really the point of this. I hope you have a wonderful day. And like Eric Draven would say about the rain, it can't rain all the time. And yeah, well, if you like, come on back. We'll draw something else at some point. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you have a wonderful week. See if we can, yeah, maybe we'll bake something. Wouldn't that be funny?